We've got all the parts now to put the balcony back together, but we're not gonna put it on the building because codes and permits, engineering restrictions and so forth. We've already looked into all that, and it's just not a feasible thing to do. One thing I do wanna mention that anytime we do get groups in here, whether it's paranormal or, people doing haunted houses or photo shoots or whatever, all of our money's gone back into the building. It's been our dream just to restore the building and maintain it and keep it on, because my kids are actually the 7th generation to have the building, and they work and play in here too, just as I did. So it's beautiful to have them working right, next door to me, in there printing T-shirts, but they also do a lot of neat stuff. Now, are we gonna hit all floors? We're gonna limit it, going clear up and clear down?
Yeah.
Okay, when you get to the 4th floor, you'll see a lot of graffiti on the wall. One of my boys is an artist. He's studying art in school, and him and his buds have done some pretty cool graffiti. They were actually, one of his friends was doing some graffiti on buildings here in town, and it's pretty bad because we own rental properties, and he had done one of my buildings. Hi, how are you guys? Yes, come on in.
We'll go to the other building first.
Oh, okay, well, welcome. I'm Ben Bisman. I'm Ben, how you doing? Good to see you. Ben Bisman, welcome to the Bisman. How are you? Good, thank you. Okay, this is where the ADD kicked in. What was I making up? Graffiti on the 4th floor.
One of your rentals.
Yeah, so our buddy Sanchez, Bob, my youngest boy's friend, tagged, as soon as I pulled down Main Street, I look up and the side of my building is tagged. And it's his tag, Craze, So I kick him in the ass and made him take a pressure washer up there and go get the graffiti off the building. 3 weeks later, I'm coming into town. We own the H&R Block building, a block prior to the one he tagged before, and they pull in and there's Craze on the side of that building. So my son's best friend tagged 2 of my buildings. So what I did is I gave him a whole wall on the 4th floor to go berserk. And they've done a pretty good job. You get up there, you'll see some pretty cool stuff. On top of the historic side of the building, we found our way into Hollywood through the building. We got a call from the producers when they were doing Shawshank, and they were looking for, we own a billboard company, so they were looking for somebody to do vintage period billboards for Shawshank. So we thought, hell, that's perfect. And my wife made contact with them, so we had a lot of discussion and settled on some period Schlitz billboards and had them produced and had them put up in locales in town, on our building, on the side, and so forth. They didn't show up in Shawshank, but they paid us for it. But what that led into was the building. They're like, wow, that's a perfect building, might you be interested in letting us use it for the Brewer Hotel? And everybody knows Shawshank and how wonderful it is and how great it was. Well, at the time it was called Rita Hayworth Shawshank Redemption. And we didn't think it was going to be any big deal, but we said, sure, we worked out an agreement, and they paid us to use the building. This part of the building where we're sitting today, if you watch the movie next time, this was on the window from when they did the production. Didn't make the movie, but that corner did. They spent excess of $20,000 just in this room to turn it into a newspaper editor's office. It was incredible. We put this new carpet down, and it looks old. That's because of the flood stains, but they turned this into the most incredible newspaper editor's office with all the people and the hats and all the tables and the books. You'd have thought they were going to open up a newspaper, but they used that part. And then as well, when you go into the next office, you'll see a picture on the side. And you guys remember when Brooks gets out of prison, goes to cross the street, and the cars are coming and stuff, and it shows a shot of him walking into the Brewer Hotel. Well, that was the front of this building. So it turned out really nice that they did utilize our building for Shawshank. All their makeup trailers were across the street in a parking lot, and with my wife working with the people producing Shawshank, she allowed us, got us to be extras. So my wife was an extra, I was an extra, and my dad was an extra. So you can barely see us, but next time you watch Shawshank, after the warden shoots himself, they shoot a shot down into the parking lot when they were putting Clancy Brown into the back of a police car, and standing right behind the door, I'm in a brown shirt, and they had my wife in a big Doris Day wig, big blonde wig. So you may see her next time you see Shawshank. And my dad was in suspenders up, leaning against a tree, and they say he called him the Pittsburgh pervert. Tell the Pittsburgh pervert to get over here. Long story short, we got a little bit of Hollywood fame out of the deal, and we all got paychecks too, which was really cool from Hollywood. So we didn't have to join the Actors Guild because we didn't have any speaking parts, but we did get to go through makeup, and my wife actually got to do makeup across the street with Morgan Freeman. So that was really cool for her.
Awesome.
And you'll meet her too. She's got the spiked hair, and she's going to be serving you guys lunch today. So we had Shawshank under our belt, and there was another movie being produced, and they got a hold of us called The Rage. And The Rage was a B horror flick. The Dead Matter was the third one to come in, and that was produced by Bob Kurtzman in Hollywood. He's the king of special effects. He's been doing the stuff in the movies for years. He left LA and moved home to Crestline, Ohio, and built this huge studio to do the computer animated graphics for all these movies in Hollywood now. And he's also, if you guys, anybody familiar with Kurtzman, because he's big time in the horror. You know, he makes masks for you guys, props, a tremendous amount of neat stuff for haunted houses. And he still has that in production. And he's got a school over in Crestline too that does a lot of the stuff for your industry. So they filmed The Rage in here, and there's an actor, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of Andrew Divoff, but he always plays a bad guy Russian. And he's in everything from the new crime TV shows to, I mean, he's just done not quite 100, but a ton of big time Hollywood flicks. And he was in here, and he was a super guy to work with, and they had a blast filming that. Did some, talk about decorating the building up. They had wonderful stages built on all the different floors. A little bit was left behind, and we've preserved it and plan on trying to get it a little bit more attractive to our visitors. But just the fact that the Hollywood has got their eye on Ohio, let alone Mansfield, is really cool. Step forward a few years, and anybody ever heard of Mushroom Head, heavy metal rock and roll band? They came and filmed here. There's another one that's a really hardcore band out of LA called Dawn of Ashes. They came from the West Coast, filmed their music video here. The Gods, rock and roll machine, I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but they've done their video here. And I could go on and on about all the cool stuff that's happened in the building. But what's cool about it is it brings life to the building. These old buildings, I've got an old building that we can't spend much time in, a block away from us, and it's slowly deteriorating. And it's amazing just having people in the building and doors open and power on and use of the pipes and stuff, what a difference it makes. And that's what's made this building work really good. And I want you guys to keep this in the back of your head as you go through the building today, being that you're in your industry. We've had a tremendous amount of discussion about doing a haunted house in this building. We think we might be a little late in the go for this year, but we want to know the feasibility, and I know it's a lot of work. And we're working with some people who've done it very successfully in the market, but we know it's not it's something that has to be done right. And I take it you guys are probably some of the best in the business. So bear that in mind. If there's any tips or suggestions, I learned a real hard lesson not too long ago when somebody told me don't do something. I went ahead and did it, and it cost me a fortune. So I'm all ears. And if you think it might be a good idea and you can see where there's possibilities, get with me afterwards and maybe share some ideas. Or I give you my email address and you can hit me up and say, yeah, here's where to get stuff, and here's what I do, or here's what I wouldn't do, and keep it simple or go crazy or whatever. But we're really interested in doing it because we do paranormal investigations in here, and we are definitely on the map. We're one of the most popular haunted sites in Ohio now. We're almost every weekend we've got groups in here. Tomorrow we've got a group coming in excess of how many people? Like
20 to 30.
20 to 30 people. And last weekend we had 2 groups in, and we had a Friday and Saturday. And it's intense. So they wire the entire building. They set up headquarters down here. They got all the monitors. They've got unbelievable high-tech equipment. But what it's done is just made this such an attractive place because of what they've come up with evidence-wise. I'm not a big paranormal believer, but I'm going to kind of pop over into the paranormal side a little bit and share some stuff with you guys, which was really cool. The very first time I had a paranormal experience in the building was on the first floor, and it was like 6 years, or fourth floor, 6 years ago. It was August. It was 105 degrees up there, and I was with the people who did the paranormal investigations at the prison, and they asked me one day if they could do an investigation here, and I said, sure, if I can come along. And I did. It was my wife and I and 5 of them, and they were very skilled in doing it, and I was pretty embarrassed. But up on the 4th floor, my grandpa, who's the second guy from the right, he actually died while I was holding his hand in a hospice, and very close to me. He lived next door to me, and he was my best friend. Dad and I didn't get along, but my grandpa and I got along swell. He sat in a chair right there, very scruff old man, well known in the community and well liked, but a prick. And one of those voices that was very low and very kind of a demanding type sounding fella. And even when I'd come in the door, he'd go, "Hey, Buck, come here, clean out my spittoon, you little shit." So I ended up doing hard labor for my grandpa, but I found this fond love for the guy because he always paid me. He always hand typed the little envelope with the cash in there, and it said, "Hey, Buck, save your money." And I did for years. But Grandpa was he was very important in okay, I got ADD a little bit here. Getting back to you got to pay closer attention to, man. The haunting. So we're on the 4th floor. It's middle of August. It's hotter than hell. Everybody's got their little thermometers looking for ghosts and stuff. And they asked me if I'd talk to my grandpa. And I was embarrassed, but I went through the typical stuff. You know, "Hey, Grandpa," he called me Buck. I don't know why, but it stuck. But he said, "Buck," I said, "It's Buck. We're here to talk to you, and I just want you to know I love you. And if you're here, give me the classic, give us a sign." Well, right then, something rolled across the floor. We were on the 3rd floor. I take it back. Something rolled across the floor above us. And everybody pretty well freaked out because it was almost on demand. So they asked me to keep talking to him. And I talked to him and told him some more stuff and talked about him passing away, and I loved him and all that stuff. And all of a sudden I got hit in the right side of my neck with an ice cold ball of air. And it hit my neck hard, real slowly, just kind of rolled across my neck. I got goosebumps, and it rolled off my arm. And when it did that, I looked over at my wife, Amber, and it hit her. It went right from me to Amber. She turned at me and said, "Did you feel that?" And I said, "Yes." And she said she felt it and didn't really see it, but it kind of whooshed off of her. That's the only real thing that's hit me in this place that's been compelling. But like I said, it was 105 degrees, and this happened, and I almost went to my knees, and the whole group freaked out over it, and it made for a very interesting night. Now, I don't do the paranormal investigations when people do them here. Joe does them, and his partner Greg, and he's a science teacher. He well versed in all the technology. Both of them actually are, but he's got a real good background in paranormal science and the science behind this newer technology. And that's why you're seeing so much now, because we're able to pick up stuff that they couldn't pick up before. So anyhow, that was my paranormal experience on the 3rd floor. Well, TAPS got a hold of us. because they had heard through the grapevine and they had done the reformatory. So they wanted to know if they could do a paranormal episode. And so they had somebody fly in, interview me, go through the building, and they were stoked. They loved the building. They did a preliminary little investigation and so forth in their KT meetings, or meters, got readings and all this stuff. So they said, yeah, we're gonna book you guys and we're gonna come. And they showed up with a full crew. They took over the entire building. Fantastic people. Anybody ever watched Taps, Ghost Hunters? Pretty cool show. The guys, Jay is a big car fanatic. And if you get a chance to go out into the shop, you'll see that we've got a bunch of old cars, and he spent most of his time on his BlackBerry bidding on a Super Bee. And standing out in the shop with my kids talking about hot rods and ghosts. But they had a wonderful episode. But the interesting part about it is they lock us out of the building when they do their investigation. There's no outsiders, so it's their deal and their evidence. And I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning at my house, and it was Jay, and he said, would you mind coming in back into the building? And so I came in, I met with him, and on the second or third floor, Grant had set up a porcelain doll in the middle of the floor with cameras on it. And they did their investigations, and when they were through that floor, Grant went up to the doll and went to knock it over, and it wouldn't move. It was almost like stuck to the floor, he said. He moved it and it wouldn't move, and he moved it again, and don't mind my weird looking shoes, that's what we wear around here. The second or third time he went to move the doll, it flew like 10 feet, broke into pieces, and they had it on film. I'm one of the only people who's seen the footage, and at that point I thought that was going to make this place skyrocket to the top of paranormal when they did the Taps episode. And they said they couldn't use it on the episode because it could be faked. Which I can, I obliged to that, but I'm the only guy that I know that has the actual footage of the event taking place. And we still have the porcelain doll in the gift shop. And we're not here to sell you stuff, I'm just telling you, it's in the display, isn't it still in there?
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy happening. For those guys to stop production, and it's real expensive to do production and something along those lines. And then bring me in, show me the event, and then kick me back out and finish their stuff. They had a good episode if you guys saw it. It was pretty decent, pretty compelling. From there, it went to My Ghost Story. They caught wind of the place, sent a girl in from Santa Monica. She spent a day with me in the building, decided to do an episode of My Ghost Story in the building. And if you guys, anybody that has seen that episode, it was a really good episode. Then, anybody watch Ghost Adventures? Zach was filming out at the prison and called me and asked if he could come into the building and check it out while they were in town. So Zach, his technology guy, myself, some psychics, the Constantinos. Anybody ever heard of them? Yep. They're big time psychics. They came into the building with her too. And I spent the night with those guys in here, and it was the most wild night I've ever had. They had new technology with, and now they're a little bit more common, but it was a round thing, looked like about a half a coffee can with clear acrylic rods on it. And the guy who designed it and built it was here, and they tested it on the 3rd floor in front of the elevator. And in 1911, I'm bouncing back and forth, but it all kind of ties together. In 1911, we had an employee named F.W. Simon, and he worked from the day we opened in 1886, retired in 1911, signed his name on a beam up on the 4th floor. That day, he lost his head in our elevator on the 3rd floor, on this side of the elevator, and which was kind of a creepy part of this whole thing. And that, they set that equipment up right in front of the elevator, and the lights started going off, and it would go green, 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 red, and they were getting all kinds of stuff. And Zach, I don't know if you guys know Zach from Ghost Adventures, But he's a real prick, he's real mouthy, he intimidates the ghosts, the spirits and so forth. Well, he got the building all stirred up, but this piece of equipment that this guy designed all of a sudden started going counterclockwise. And he's an electrical engineer, and he said it's impossible for this to literally do that. Pardon?
Chapel.
Yeah, exactly. So they totally freaked out and spent the rest of the night going berserk in this place. The Constantinos, I sat on the floor out here in the hall with them as she literally talked to this little girl that's allegedly buried in her basement. Her name's Ruth Bisman. We nicknamed her Ruth because there's a picture that used to be on the mantle back there of, yeah, it is there. There's a little girl on the right, and on the back of the picture it says Ruthie Bisman, Billy Bisman, and Gladys Bisman. That picture showed up out on my welding table one day. Nobody ever laid claim to it, and nobody has since how it got here or who dropped it off. But through the paranormal investigations with the K2 meters and stuff, they've had conversations with this little girl, and they've asked her if her name was Ruth, and she said her name's not Ruth. Asked her if they could call her Ruth, and she said yeah. And they've had great stuff. If you go to, once again, like go to YouTube and do Haunted Bisman Building, there's quite a long section of the paranormal group, and there was 12 people in a room with K2 meters and microphones, recorders, and talked to her for over 2 hours. And she answered all kinds of questions, and a lot of this is on YouTube. Compelling stuff. They asked her how old she is, and she said, I'm 8 years old, blinked it 8 times. Half hour later, how old are you? Bing, 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 8 times. Some real creepy stuff. Mrs. Constantino stood in here talking to this group, talking to everybody, and said there's a little girl standing at the top of the stairs looking down at us. We had a second psychic in here did the same thing, unknowing of anything, because when they spoke with her, when this group talked to Ruthie, she told them that she was not allowed to go down past the second floor. So it's really goosebumpy stuff that's happened like that. I don't know the time frame, but I noticed you mentioned time. I know you guys want to see the building, gotta eat.
See the building and eat and leave by 1:30.
Okay. I'll cut her off at that. I know there's a lot to see. I just wanted to kind of brief you guys. You know, you signed a waiver. The waiver is all about safety. Be really careful. We've got holes in the floor. We're not a haunted attraction like you guys are used to, where everything's set up safe. A lot of personal stuff sitting around. I tell everybody the same thing. Keep your hands off the goodies, because sometimes we had a picture disappear once. Respect all my stuff. That's why I let people come in here. Everybody's been really cool. Have fun. If you got any questions, Joe and Greg can answer them. Got a good lunch for you guys, and have fun. Any questions?
Do you have extra of
The building, the flyers, I think we do have some. We just have them printed, and the people from, like the Downtown Growth Association, she just came in here about an hour before you guys and grabbed a bunch for the traveler.
She worked this out.
Traveler.
But get at me after the tour and I'll get you some in your hand.
Yeah, there's a bathroom right around the corner as you go out the door.